Today, I'm going to be talking about the episode The Firestorm and our guest recurring actor, John Ritter. If you're enjoying these, please subscribe and hit the like button. The episode The Firestorm was directed by Ralph Sinensky, who directed a number of Walton episodes, and was written by Rod Peterson and Claire Whitaker, who I absolutely adored and who wrote a number of significant Walton episodes, including My Wedding and The Birth of My Child. They went on to be producers and story editors and writers on the Waltons for a number of years, and also lifelong friends. There were some sweet moments in this episode. I loved seeing Cammie Kotler, Elizabeth, in her dress, and that dress was one she had had for a few seasons, and in this particular episode it's looking a little short, and I thought it was wonderful how the wardrobe department, rather than providing her with new, well-fitting clothes that were the right length, they continued to let her wear something that was getting too short and too small for her, just like would have happened in real life at that time when they were on a limited budget and didn't have the opportunity to go out and get new clothes for the children, and a lot of hand-me-downs. We also reflected that in the series, where clothes of mine went to Aaron and then things went down to Elizabeth. Very realistic for any family, but particularly a family during the Depression. I love the subtle ways that they revealed the era, like the newsreels at the beginning of the episode when they were at the movies. Very much a sign of the time and how films were done and how people got news. And then also the fact that the family didn't have a phone, also, very, very true to the period. The set of the church in this episode was filmed on the interior of a sound stage. So during the whole sequence where Reverend Fordwick is doing his sermon and we're all in church, that would have all been filmed on one of our sound stages. This episode also featured the character of David Spencer, Mary Ellen's fiance before she married Kurt, played wonderfully by actor Robert Woods. Bob and I became very good friends during the filming of those episodes, since he did a number of them. And it was very early in his career, and one of the things I most remember is how nervous he was in the beginning, and that I really think I helped him to settle down and relax and just enjoy the work and be comfortable doing the scenes. So we shared a lot of those sorts of moments together of just, hey, chill, it's cool, and trying to keep things very just loose and fun and relaxed. And I always enjoyed the scenes that we got to do together, and I really enjoyed his character, and I was sorry to see his character move off of the show. But luckily for Bob, he went on to a very successful career, has spent years on the soap opera One Life to Live, so you can always go watch him there, as well as in reruns of the Waltons. John Ritter. John Ritter was amazing to work with, and he and Richard together were two peas in a pod. There were so many bloopers and outtakes when the two of them were working, not because they couldn't do the work and weren't professionals, but just they liked to have fun. And it was never to the extent wherein it interfered with getting the job done. But we were in the flight path of the Burbank airport, so there were frequently takes when a plane would go over and they would have to stop filming for sound purposes. So often when that would happen, whether it was Richard or John Ritter or Ralph, or a scene would be happening, it might be a very serious, intense scene, and then this plane would come in, and so one of them might go, oh, well, and why don't we catch that jet? And those would make it to our blooper reel. There were a lot of other things said and done at those moments as well. But Richard and John were notorious for trying to crack each other up and for various different pranks, whether planned, like creating something that would foam at the mouth so they looked like they were rabid, or I remember being in church one time with Richard, and he leaned over to me and he had this, and he's like, okay. So in our take, there was a point where on our close-up, we suddenly slid down and disappeared out of the pews onto the floor, which sounds like no big deal, but in the moment, the way it was set up, it was actually very funny, and of course everybody laughed and come Christmas time, they would show these outtake blooper reels at our Christmas party. So John and Richard together cooked up a lot of things like that. John obviously had an incredible sense of humor. It was very much in evidence when he went on to have such a successful career in comedy, doing Three's Company and other films. We really missed him when he left the Waltons. And of course, we all missed him when we lost him too early. The Waltons, the producers, the writers, they were always willing to tackle tough subjects, and this episode was no different. There was a real moral dilemma to this episode and John Boy's decision about whether or not to ultimately print information about what the Nazis were doing with burning books in Germany and Hitler's rise and his publication of Mein Kampf. It also dealt with prejudice and revealed through Mrs. Brimmer, portrayed brilliantly by actress Nora Marlowe, her secret about her German connection and her desire for John Boy to keep it secret for fear of retaliation in the community, and ultimately how she beautifully revealed that at the ultimate moment of that book burning when John Boy asked her to read from what turned out to be a German version of the Bible. What an incredibly powerful moment for everyone involved. One of my all-time favorite Walton scenes. The scene around the campfire for the book burning, I think, is one of the most impactful, significant scenes that we ever filmed on the Waltons, and one that has always stayed in my mind from filming it. I remember it was incredibly intense to film, and the amount of emotion and tension in that scene, the way it was shot was beautiful, and the acting performances from Richard, from Nora Marlowe as Mrs. Brimmer, from John Ritter, that combination of them was just heartbreaking and poignant, and to this day sends goosebumps down my arms. And that moment at the end when Richard hands that Bible over to John Ritter, and then John Ritter hands back a couple of books to John Boy for his safekeeping. Sorry, I don't think it gets any better than that. So that is my insights into the episode The Firestorm. Thank you for joining me. I will be back with more episodes behind the scenes of the Waltons.